Good morning. Okay, I'm just going to check this works. Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you to Jinjun and to everyone at KAIST for inviting me to be here. It really is an honor to start the day with such an amazing array of speakers here. So as you know, my name is Kay Watson. I'm a producer and curator. I'm head of arts technologies at Serpentine in London, where I've worked for the last 7 years, developing the art and technology program with my colleagues in the arts technologies team. I'm here to start the day, and in many ways, the way I thought about this was to think about providing at least some kind of provocation, or at least some inspiration about how arts organisations, artists, and the wider field of art can come into a meaningful dialogue with other fields around AI and its related technologies and its impact on its society at large. And I do think that art has a key role to play here. Key here, at least to my perspective and our ethos at Serpentine, is the role of organisations, institutions, and the structures we provide for experimentation, dialogue, and convening. So I do begin with this question: can art shape the technologies of the future? And my hopeful answer is yes, but with the knowledge that we're talking about the requirement of time, space, investment, collaboration between fields. And I think this is an important one, a shift in how we measure success or value or impact in the arts, and actually likely in other fields, in order to make this a sustained reality. So the Serpentine is a public art gallery. This is an overhead shot. And charity that has presented pioneering contemporary art since 1970. We are based in London, in Hyde Park. So we are from our Pavilion Commission, which is where we present a first built structure by an architect in the UK, to exhibitions, digital programs, and off-site projects. We champion new ideas in art and architecture across 2 buildings and beyond. In particular, we focus on three core themes: technology, ecology, and community. I obviously represent the strand of technology through the Arts Technologies program, but of course these themes are not standalone and always interconnected. So, So the Arts Technologies program at Serpentine proposes critical and interdisciplinary perspectives on advanced technologies through artistic interventions. And over the last 10 years, our team has been developing strategies for an artist-led program that creates space to challenge and reshape the role that technologies can play in culture and society. So we have developed 2 main capabilities. And this diagram describes broadly how we're constructed. I love a diagram to explain things. And the way that we are divided, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, is between commissioning and R&D. Another way that we sometimes talk about this is having an ecosystem focus versus an institutional focus, as in Serpentine focus. And I think that's how we move between the work that we do. And so in terms of commissioning and production, we initiate and support artists in developing ambitious artworks that deploy advanced technologies as a medium, tool, or topic. Key here to the way that we work is our focus on production. We build teams around projects and leading on workflows and pipelines, which is extremely unusual in a contemporary art gallery setting. The most recent, which is not, well, it has some addition of AI, but is not specifically AI, was the development of a video game and exhibition with the Brazilian artist Gabriel Massan that launched on Steam and in the gallery. Please excuse my voice, I'm losing my voice already. And then on the other side of the work that I've described is R&D and the research and development platform. This is really the foundation of the department and what we have the title of as the R&D platform that supports the development of infrastructures for ongoing artistic exploration and interrogation of advanced and emerging technologies. It is where we develop strategy by the art field for the art field. It represents convening, thought leadership, knowledge sharing, and work to influence cultural policy. And we do this, and this is why this slide is here, through one project called Future Art Ecosystems, or FAE, which is a project for building 21st century cultural infrastructure, which we define as the systems that support the production, distribution, and financialization of art and advanced technologies in a whole, and in response to a broader societal agenda. Actually, I'll continue on this slide. We also do this through a series of labs, which are in areas of strategic importance for us. We have a legal lab which focuses on art, tech and science collaborations. We have a creative AI lab, which I'll talk about. We have a synthetic ecologies lab, which focuses on life sciences, and a blockchain lab, which focuses on DAOs. So what I'm going to do is introduce our work with AI through both of these capabilities, commissioning and R&D. In this room of extremely esteemed colleagues who are very much at the forefront of this work, probably don't need to say this, but in this current moment of AI scaling, in which, as an example, large language models have become embedded in everyday infrastructure and therefore influencing our understanding of reality, we are developing work to understand where and culture, in its broadest sense, is currently, and where it can interrogate, intervene, and shape for the benefit of a wider public over the next few years and beyond. Asking ourselves, how can we support artistic experimentation, but also what are the shifts, changes that need to take place within organizations to be ready for infrastructural shifts. It's also important to recognize that there is a history of AI in creative practice. This is not necessarily that new, and that hype cycles come and go, and so ensuring that any work is sustainable. So I wanted to begin by going through some of the artist-led projects that we have commissioned and produced over the years. And in the most part, and these are the works that we've developed with AI at differing levels of complexity. And in doing so, I want to explore some of the artistic approaches to working with the technology that have emerged over the last few years. How these might draw attention to alternative or non-human forms of intelligence, to forms and access of knowledge, cognition, consciousness, the political and social nuances of data, large language models and predictive systems, and so on. The first project I want to talk about is a project we developed in 2018 with an artist called Ian Cheng, who's a US artist. It was the birth of an artificial life form at Serpentine in 2018. Bob evolved in response to interactions with audiences throughout the exhibition, in which Serpentine were also essentially carers. We had to feed Bob twice a day, and so forth. Ian's work explores mutation, the history of human consciousness, and the capacity of individual agents to relate or understand change. He draws on principles of video game design, improvisation, and cognitive science, and he's developed life simulations, which are virtual systems of infinite duration, which are populated with agents who are programmed with behavioral drives, but left to self-evolve. And Bob is an expansion of this, with a model of AI, and I quote Ian here, is a congress of motivating demons and an inductive engine capable of learning rule-based beliefs from sensory experiences. Each demon functions as a micro-personality who obsessively attempts to fulfill its own micro-story. And this, I show this slide here because this is an example of how this interaction takes place. Pre-pandemic, when we used Skype, you could Skype, to use the term we used at the time, into Bob's world, and facial recognition would alter how Bob would evolve according to his behavioral drives. That's a very short way of me explaining it. So then I'll move on to another work from 2019, which is a Berlin-based Finnish artist called Jenna Sutela, and the work is called eMagma. This was a machine oracle, an exploration of alternative forms of intelligence that was co-commissioned with Moderna Museet in Stockholm. This manifested as an app for mobile devices and a series of glass-blown lava heads that coexisted together. So the aim of the project was to draw a line between histories of mysticism, psychedelia, and technology. The work placed an emphasis on altered states of consciousness and the creation of artificially intelligent, deep dreaming computational systems that mimic the brain. It was influenced by divinatory practices such as the I Ching, and e-magma aimed to build a bridge between these ancient systems of knowledge and our contemporary attempts to divine the future. Working with Memo Acton and Alison Parrish, the work was driven by magma, influenced by the Cloudflare lava lamp encryption system. If you are aware of that, it's well worth looking up. It was this, as she calls it, primordial goo, that becomes both the physical grey matter, the brain matter that flows within a series of head-shaped lava lamps that also powered the flow of the machine oracle's predictions through machine vision. I hope this is clear from these images. And the divinatory texts were also machine generated using a library of open source texts focused on psychedelia and mysticism. I'll move on to another project from 2019, which was a project by the German artist Hito Steyer. We commissioned Hito on a quite a large project which looked at the relationship between power and digital technologies with a focus on AI systems. This was an exhibition, a digital tool, which is what I'm going to show you, and a series of civic events that really pulled apart the layers, seeking to move between the technological and the fundamentally human. From a series of video installations built using an AI to predict the next frames of a film, to Actual Reality OS, which is this project, which is an open source digital tool for data visualization that brought together augmented reality, immersive audio, and strategies of data collection and mapping for mobile devices. What we were doing here was really examining the layers behind how predictive modeling is being used to ascertain access to key services like health and housing. We worked with a coalition of research partners and data researchers to aggregate not only national survey data from the public domain, but data mined from Freedom of Information Act requests, community-led initiatives, and personal testimonies. The app reconciled macro statistical information with micro data sets and the way that the voice of individuals can form a nuanced, human-centered approach to data. To visualize this, we used, and this is what you're seeing here, is the architecture of the Serpentine to chart these stark inequalities and differences in data points, according to things like social housing, as you see here, using a series of these sigils that incorporated encrypted messages in order to trigger that augmented reality view. So I'll move on to the next one. So finally, from a commissioning point of view, this is a work that doesn't exist yet. We are working on a year-long research project with Holly Herndon and Matt Dryhurst, which will result in their first major solo exhibition at Serpentine in 2024. They were recently named Time Magazine's most influential voices in AI. And what's so interesting about the way that they work in the context of this symposium is that they're developing their own practice, tools for other artists, and developing discourse around the field through their brilliant Interdependence podcast. So in their third album, Proto, the artist built a synthetic voice system called Spawn, which was an AI-generated voice that created from voice data sets collected from choirs and from their own live performances, including audience interaction, so including the audience in this. And then from Spawn, a project called Holly+, which is ongoing. It's a tool and Web3 organization that gives access to Herndon's digital voice. These new creations using Holly+ can be submitted to the Holly+ DAO, which is a management structure that uses blockchain to make collective decisions about the authenticity of these new creations and attaches an economic model to such creations and distributes the revenue between the creators, the DAO, and artists. And then this, which I think is really interesting also, is Spawning, which is a company, an organization that they co-founded with other collaborators that develops tools and strategies to help artists assert their agency in a creative economy where AI is the new normal. Artists can check if their work has been used in training sets using a portal called Have I Been Trained? And they recently launched something called Kuduru, which allows artists to basically thwart data crawlers, alerts the network to attack, and sends back material to confuse to confuse. They call it poisonous content. This leads us to a collaboration with Serpentine, where we'll be examining what it means to work with AI models and training data in the context of an arts organisation through the lens of polyphony, music, and voice. So hopefully I'm not overdoing the time here, so apologies. This is a useful segue to look at a very different kind of work that is coming out of the Serpentine and from an arts organisation, which is emerging through the Serpentine's R&D platform, of which this is a snapshot of some of that AI work. So since 2019, we've had something called the Creative AI Lab. This is not a physical space, it's a networked program. It's a space for long-term research by the Arts Technologies team and King's College London, the Department of Digital Humanities, which is looking into artistic practices working with AI and machine learning, and it's led by my wonderful colleague, Ava Yeager and Mercedes Bunz. The aim here is that by focusing on the back end of artistic production, the lab uses artistic practice and prototyping to speculate about systemic impacts of emerging tools, systems, and infrastructures, both within the arts and humanities and in terms of wider public interest. The lab launched the Creative AI database in 2020. This is a screenshot of that, which is regularly updated with tools and resources, including readings and interviews. There's a new functionality, which is a way of measuring different qualities of some of these items on the database, such as transparency or publicness or openness. So that's a new addition. Also, what I'm showing here on the right is, of course, all of our work is artist-led, is the work of demystification. We've been developing a series of works called God Mode that we have been supporting, which explore the increasing use of game engine simulations of real-world scenarios to train computer vision systems. This has resulted in live performances and a game, which you can download from Steam. And I also include this because video games and game engines are another key area of focus for us, which may not come through in this presentation. I think it's interesting to see where all of these areas intersect, including blockchain as well. Also, a key thing for the lab is that we undertake significant research and knowledge sharing. So this is new and very speculative at the moment. The latest project being undertaken by the lab concerns art and public AI. The project will form the basis of the next Future Art Ecosystems report, which will be released in spring 2024. And at the moment, it's a work in progress, and we always welcome comments and feedback. So with all of our Future Art Ecosystems reports, we are looking at AI from an ecosystemic perspective for the arts with a view to broader societal impact. In doing so, we are seeking to survey the landscape not just of artistic practices, but, for example, the status of integration of AI in the operational side of culture, current legal frameworks for artists and arts organisations, and this kind of thing. In doing so, we aim to build recommendations and strategies for the field. So the evolution of AI systems raise questions about how public these systems are and will be, not just in terms of access, but how they're developed and with what data. And we know the rest of the story. In tech development and just not AI, the relationship between the public and private sector through open source community, the private sector developing public goods and so on, has always been very nuanced. And this moment of great change in digital infrastructure, we feel that these layers should be pulled apart, and that the cultural sphere is an interesting and important context for this work to happen. This is some research that's going on that's looking at the tech stack of AI and where the cultural sphere and artists, arts organisations could potentially intervene. And I quote, I like this from a recent blog on the King's College website, which is how, as part of this research process, it's been an interesting preliminary exercise for shifting the conversation around foundational AI models, being purely about the IP of inputs and training data and outputs, therefore generated works, to a bigger one about the interplay between different public and private governance and ownership models used at each layer of the stack. And I think this represents some of what we're trying to do with this latest piece of research. And so there's other pieces of work that are coming out of our work with AI. For example, our legal lab, which explores how the law can better support collaborations across art, science, and technology, is looking at licensing as a framework for artists in the future, in an AI-powered future, but also the potential of AI in developing legal tools for art and technology, and we're looking at building a data set. This is all work that's being prototyped at the moment. And then finally, my colleague Victoria Ivanova is leading on research and prototyping into ownership structures and property, which could have interesting ramifications when it comes to consent and ownership of IP, training data, and so forth, as we're seeing in some nascent lawsuits. So we're looking at different ideas, such as partial common ownership, which is a stewardship model for the benefit of communities around projects, supported by blockchain, and testing these in an art context. I wanted to include these two slightly maybe curveball projects as a way of explaining how the sort of shift in digital infrastructure at the moment is leading us also in different directions. It's not just specifically about the AI technology in itself, but how it expands out. So, to return to my initial question, what I hope I am able to at least partially demonstrate is that interventions in technological systems can happen at different levels of publicness, different layers of the stack, at different stages, from licensings for artists to building artist-led data sets to best practice for arts organizations in a time of machine learning. But this is also about building more nuanced narratives through culture about these systems and these tools. And one way we can do this is by creating opportunities for artists to do what they do best, and that is experimentation. So I want to say thank you again for having me here. It's been a real honor. Our work is inherently collaborative, so please come and speak to me at any point today. I'd be very happy to discuss this work. Thank you.